Have you ever wondered why your Wi-Fi works perfectly in your living room but dies the second you walk into your bathroom? Everyone says the signal goes through walls, but here's what nobody tells you. Wi-Fi doesn't really go through walls at all, not in the way you think. What's actually happening is way stranger and way cooler than anyone ever explains. Your router is essentially screaming at your phone using invisible waves that behave more like water than anything else. And once you understand how those waves actually move through your house, you'll never look at your router the same way again. In the next 15 minutes, you're gonna understand exactly why Wi-Fi acts so weird in different rooms. And trust me, this changes everything about where you put your router. Here's what's really happening every single day. You're sitting on your couch watching Netflix on your laptop, signal's perfect. 5 bars, then you walk 20 feet to your bedroom, close the door, and suddenly you're buffering. You've got maybe 2 bars if you're lucky, your router hasn't moved, you barely moved, but your Wi-Fi just died. So you do what everyone does. You blame your internet provider. You restart your router, you move closer to the door, maybe you even upgrade your internet plan thinking that'll fix it. But none of that actually solves the problem, because the problem isn't your internet speed or your provider or even your router. The problem is that you don't understand how Wi-Fi actually moves through space. Think about it this way. Your router is sitting in your living room pumping out invisible waves 24/7. Those waves need to reach your phone in the bedroom. Everyone assumes the waves just pass through the wall, like it's not even there, like the wall is transparent to Wi-Fi. But that's not what actually happens. What really happens is those waves hit the wall and do something way more complicated. Some of them bounce off, some of them get absorbed and turn into heat, and only some of them actually make it through. And the ones that do make it through, they come out weaker and scrambled and heading in slightly different directions. Here's what most people don't realize. Wi-Fi is just light, literally. It's the same stuff as the light you see with your eyes, just at a different frequency that your eyes can't detect. When you turn on your router, you're basically turning on an invisible lamp that your phone can see, but you can't. And just like regular light, Wi-Fi waves bounce off surfaces, get absorbed by materials, and bend around corners in predictable ways. And this matters because you're surrounded by obstacles that treat Wi-Fi waves like enemies. Your walls, your furniture, your refrigerator, even the water in your fish tank. All of it is actively blocking, absorbing, or scattering the signal from your router to your phone. It's not just about distance. It's about everything between your router and your device acting like a battlefield for invisible waves. And most people never even think about this until their Zoom call freezes during an important meeting. So here's how Wi-Fi actually works. And I'm gonna make this so clear that you'll wonder why your router manual never explained it this way. When your router sends out a Wi-Fi signal, it's creating what's called an electromagnetic wave. This is the same type of wave as radio, microwaves, X-rays, and visible light. They're all just energy vibrating at different speeds. Wi-Fi specifically vibrates about 2.4 billion times per second or 5 billion times per second, depending on whether you're using the 2.4 gigahertz band or the 5 gigahertz band. Your eyes can't see these vibrations because they're tuned to detect much faster vibrations, like the ones that make up red and blue light. Think of it like sound. A dog whistle makes a sound that's too high-pitched for you to hear, but dogs can hear it perfectly. Same deal with Wi-Fi. It's light that's too low frequency for your eyes to detect, but your phone's antenna can pick it up just fine. Now here's where it gets interesting. These electromagnetic waves spread out from your router in all directions, kind of like ripples spreading out when you drop a rock in a pond, except instead of moving across a flat surface, they're moving through 3-dimensional space. Your router is constantly creating these ripples billions of times per second, spreading out in a sphere around itself. When these waves hit a wall, something fascinating happens. The wave doesn't just stop, it tries to keep going. But walls are made of atoms, and those atoms have electrons. And when an electromagnetic wave hits electrons, it makes them jiggle. This jiggling takes energy from the wave. It's like trying to push a shopping cart through sand instead of smooth pavement. You can still move forward, but you lose a lot of energy doing it. This matters because different materials have different amounts of electrons that can jiggle. Drywall? Not too bad. It's mostly just compressed powder and paper, so Wi-Fi can push through it pretty easily. you lose maybe half your signal strength, but it gets through. Wood, similar story. Brick, now we're talking serious signal loss. Maybe 70% of your signal gets absorbed. Concrete, even worse. Metal, forget about it. Metal is like a mirror for Wi-Fi waves. The signal just bounces right off. And here's what makes this even more surprising. Water absorbs Wi-Fi like crazy. Remember how I said Wi-Fi makes electrons jiggle? Well, water molecules are really good at jiggling when Wi-Fi hits them. In fact, that's exactly how your microwave oven works. It shoots Wi-Fi-like waves at your food, the water molecules in your food start vibrating like crazy, and that vibration creates heat. Your microwave is literally a super powerful Wi-Fi router that cooks things. This is why your Wi-Fi signal dies when you walk past an aquarium. It's why the signal gets worse when it rains. It's why you get terrible reception in your bathroom, those pipes full of water in your walls are absorbing the signal, and it's definitely why you can't get Wi-Fi in your basement if your router's upstairs. All that plumbing between floors is blocking the waves. But here's where things get really wild. Wi-Fi doesn't just go straight through walls or bounce off them. It does something called diffraction. This is when waves bend around corners and obstacles. Imagine you're at a party and someone's talking in the next room. You can hear them even though there's a wall between you because sound waves bend around the doorway and spread out into your room. Wi-Fi does the same thing. When Wi-Fi waves hit the edge of a wall or the frame of a door, they bend slightly and spread out on the other side. This is why you can sometimes get signal around corners, even when there's no direct line of sight to your router. The waves are literally curving around obstacles to reach your phone. But here's the catch. Every time they bend, they lose energy. And they spread out more, which means the signal gets weaker. There's this pattern I call the hallway effect. You've probably experienced this without knowing what it was. You're in a long hallway and your Wi-Fi is perfect. Walk into a room off that hallway and suddenly your signal drops. Why? Because hallways act like waveguides. The walls on both sides keep bouncing the Wi-Fi waves forward, kind of like how a garden hose keeps water flowing in one direction. But the moment you step into a room, the waves spread out in all directions and there's nothing to focus them. The signal disperses and gets weak. Your brain doesn't naturally think in waves because you can't see them. Back when we were evolving on the African savanna, we never had to worry about invisible waves bouncing off rocks. We only cared about what we could see and touch. So our brains developed to think in straight lines and solid objects. That's why Wi-Fi feels so mysterious. Your brain wants to think of it like throwing a ball. It either makes it through the wall or it doesn't. But waves don't work that way. They partially penetrate, partially reflect, partially scatter. It's messy and complicated, which is why it's so hard to predict where you'll get good signal. Now, this next pattern is particularly sneaky because almost nobody talks about it. Your router broadcasts on two different frequencies, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. And these two frequencies behave completely differently when they hit obstacles. This is what I call the frequency paradox. The 5 gigahertz frequency is faster. It can carry more data. It's the newer, better technology. Everyone wants to be on 5 gigahertz. But here's what nobody tells you. 5 gigahertz is terrible at going through walls. It's like the difference between a heavy bass drum and a high-pitched flute. The bass drum, 2.4 gigahertz, can shake the walls of a building and you can feel it outside. The flute, 5 gigahertz, sounds beautiful up close, but the sound doesn't carry far. Higher frequency waves are more easily absorbed by materials. They don't bend around corners as well, they reflect off surfaces more readily. So even though 5 gigahertz can technically give you faster speeds, it only works if you're in the same room as your router. The moment you add a wall or two, the signal dies. 2.4 gigahertz is slower, but it's way better at penetrating obstacles. It bends around corners more effectively, it travels further. This is why your phone often automatically switches to 2.4 gigahertz when you walk into another room. Not because the signal is better, but because it's the only signal that made it through the walls. Think about Jake. Jake just upgraded to a fancy new mesh Wi-Fi system because his old router wasn't reaching his home office. He spent $400 on this setup. He puts the main router in his living room and the mesh node in the hallway, thinking that'll solve everything. And for about a week, Jake's convinced he's a genius. His Wi-Fi seems faster, more reliable, But then Jake starts noticing something weird. When he's on Zoom calls in his office with the door closed, his video keeps freezing. His audio cuts out. He's confused because the mesh node is literally 15 feet away in the hallway. Shouldn't that be close enough? So Jake does what everyone does. He blames Zoom. He closes other apps. He restarts his computer. Nothing works. Here's what Jake doesn't realize. His office door is hollow core, which is fine, but there's a metal filing cabinet right next to the door, and his desk is positioned so his laptop sits behind that filing cabinet relative to where the hallway node is. That metal cabinet is acting like a shield, bouncing the 5 gigahertz signal away from his laptop. Jake's getting maybe 10% of the signal strength he should be getting, and he has no idea why because he can't see the invisible waves bouncing off that cabinet. Jake eventually moves his mesh node. He puts it on a shelf in his office, higher up, with clear line of sight to his desk. And boom, problem solved. But he only figured this out after weeks of frustration because nobody ever explained to him that Wi-Fi waves travel in straight lines and metal reflects them like a mirror. Now compare that to Lisa. Lisa also has Wi-Fi problems. She's in a 2-story house and her router is downstairs in the living room. She needs Wi-Fi upstairs in her bedroom. But Lisa understands something Jake didn't. She knows Wi-Fi is just invisible light and light needs a path. So instead of putting a mesh node in the hallway upstairs, Lisa thinks about where the waves can actually travel. She realizes the stairwell is open, no doors, no walls blocking the path between the living room and the upstairs hallway, so she puts her mesh node at the top of the stairs. The Wi-Fi waves can travel up the open stairwell, hit the mesh node, and then the mesh node rebroadcasts the signal into the upstairs rooms. Lisa also does something clever. She keeps her router away from the TV, away from the microwave, and away from the corner of the room. She puts it high up on a bookshelf, out in the open, centrally located. Because Lisa understands that the router needs to broadcast in all directions and anything nearby will block or absorb the signal. Notice how both of them had the same problem, weak Wi-Fi in certain rooms, but only one of them understood the system? Jake treated Wi-Fi like magic that should just work everywhere. Lisa treated it like invisible light that needs a clear path. And when things went wrong, Jake blamed the technology while Lisa adjusted her strategy. Here's what most people don't realize about all of this. It's not actually about having the fastest router or the newest technology. It's about understanding that Wi-Fi is waves, and waves behave in predictable ways. The people who get great Wi-Fi everywhere don't have better internet plans. They understand that obstacles matter, that height matters, that material composition matters, and that frequency makes a huge difference. It's not about spending more money on fancier equipment. It's about understanding the physics. Once you see Wi-Fi as invisible light that bounces, absorbs, and bends around obstacles, everything changes. You start thinking about placement differently. You start understanding why certain rooms are dead zones. You start realizing that moving your router 6 feet to the left might solve problems that an expensive upgrade wouldn't touch. So here's what we've uncovered. Wi-Fi isn't going through your walls, it's being absorbed, reflected, and scattered by them. Remember how different materials absorb different amounts of signal? Plus how higher frequencies don't penetrate as well as lower ones? Plus how metal acts like a mirror and water soaks up the waves? This all connects to the fact that Wi-Fi is just invisible light behaving exactly how light behaves. The question isn't whether your router is powerful enough. The question is whether you'll recognize that obstacles matter when you're troubleshooting your signal. Because now you know Wi-Fi is waves, not magic. You can't unknow it. So next time you're setting up a router or trying to figure out why your signal's weak in the bedroom, ask yourself, what's between my router and my device? Is there metal? Is there water? Are there multiple walls? Because once you see Wi-Fi as waves that need a clear path, everything looks different. And that might be the most valuable thing you learn all week.